North Dakota is in a mental health crisis, but there is help and there is hope. Welcome to It Matters, a series of conversations aimed at fostering mental well being in North Dakota, presented by Inspired Woman, where every story lights the way. I'm your host, Marci Narum. I think we can all agree parents should never have to bury a child, but there is another kind of grief that is as unimaginable as the death of a child or a teenager. My guest is Jenny Maattala, founder and executive director of Soul 57, a support group for young kids coping with the death of a parent. Thank you so much for being here,
Thank you for
Jenny.
having me, Marcy.
I think I just want to start with having you tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am from North Dakota, born and bred, but my background was more in writing and editing. And so I've lived in New York and lived in South Dakota, Minneapolis, spent a little time in Denver, just all places that will try and give me more of the background in writing, publishing, editing. But I've been back here in the Bismarck area for about 8 years. I have 4 kids, a husband, dog. So, yeah,
That sounds like life is good.
life is good. It's good to be back closer to family.
And so we're going to talk about Soul 57. What
Yeah.
is Soul 57 and how did it get started?
When I was 6 years old, my mom passed away from a brain tumor. She was 31. It was just my brother and myself growing up, and then my sister, who lived about 40 minutes away with her mom. And so, just growing up, I knew um, what that loss looked like and felt like, but there weren't a lot of resources around, um, either in terms of other kids who had gone through similar things or just receiving the sort of help you need from side effects from loss and from grief. And so I used writing, and that was why I ended up evolving it into a lifelong career because I knew the importance of it and it just became a passion of mine. And then in 2019, my sister also ended up passing away. She had 4 kids when she died. She was 41. Her kids were 12, 11, 9, and 8, and I knew what they were going to be up against. And, at that point, it was 30 years later, and looking at the resources that were offered, there's still just not a lot of grief specific resources for youth. There are other wonderful programs in our community for adults, or there's paid therapists, but therapists are so inundated with other mental health issues and other traumas. And so there can be such an extreme wait list. And when you're grieving, whether it's a fresh grief or a loss that happened years ago, but you're having all of that trauma or something triggers those feelings, you don't necessarily want to wait months and months. And so the idea for Soul 57 came in the last couple weeks of my sister's life. And I knew for me, writing was such a necessary tool to help process emotions and make sense of the world around me. But I know writing isn't going to be everybody's shtick. And so I had this idea, well, what if we provide this community for kids who have all gone through similar losses and they're there to support each other, but in addition to that, let's give them continuing tools. And so, whether it's this year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years down the road, they'll really find some continuing resources that will help them grieve. And so, at Soul 57, we offer that peer group support, but we also do writing and art and music and recreational workshops. And under the recreation category, there's equine therapy or meditative movement or yoga or dance, just all sorts of activities that kids could latch onto. We just had a gardening workshop last weekend where we had a family centered one. So kids and their caregivers were able to come out and plant a community garden.
Tell me more about the specific services that you provide.
So our peer support services or group services, those are every Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. We have a licensed mental health provider who facilitates those groups. Um, Kids are dealing with those losses and that grief, but many of them are dealing with so much more. Some of the losses are not um, expected. Some of them are much more traumatic than others. And so we want to have a licensed professional always facilitating that peer supported group so that we can find any red flags or anything like that. And we also work closely with the caregivers or parents, and if they're seeing any other therapists or school counselors. And we do dinner for the kids that night. And we also offer a caregiver support group that coincides same day, same time, just different room. And that's peer facilitated. And so we really want those parents to not only understand that they have support in the community, but we want them when they walk out of our facility, we want them to be able to continue the conversation with their child and continue finding healthy ways of navigating this grief journey that they're on together. Our workshops are the first Saturday of every month, and we alternate with writing, art, music, recreation. And those are for 2.5 hours. And we get other members of the community, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of other businesses who are professionals in the field, and we've partnered with them. So places like Northern Plains Dance or TR for Heart and Soul. We've done Arts for All, Theo Art School, um, Arioso Music, and then I do all of the writing workshops at this point. But we've spoken with other local authors and writers who have interest in coming in and working with kids on that. And again, meals are provided. And every single service we do, whether it's caregiver or peer support or workshops, is 100% free. We never want money to become a burden on somebody's mental health.
Mm. And so, when did you start Soul 57?
We opened doors September 2023. So we're still kind of in our infancy, still really listening to what the community needs. We are growing in ways that we didn't expect to grow. We started going into BHS in January. They reached out to us. And again, every school, elementary, high school, has a social worker at their availability, but they're just also inundated with needs and traumas. And they were really looking to have a professional in the field of grief because in just the last year, 14 of their students had lost somebody close to them. So our original mission was parent, sibling, primary caregiver. But in the last year, we've expanded that to significant other, best friend. We've worked with groups at BHS. We've met with all of the counselors in the BPS system. And now moving into the 24-25 school year, we're going to look at having more specific groups within the schools, especially for anybody in more of the underprivileged areas, so that if they don't have the resources to come to our facility once a week, that we are able to then bring it to them and try and get rid of that barrier for them.
It's said that grief doesn't have a time limit.
Mhm.
And so, how long do you work with the kiddos and determine, that there is some success there?
Mhm. We have an open door policy. So if you lost somebody a week ago and you feel like you are ready to come and sit with us and talk, or even sit and listen to other peers talk and be supportive for them, we are there for you immediately. There's other people who've come to us after having lost somebody years ago. And part of that is because they didn't have these resources prior to that. But also part of that is because grief doesn't necessarily have a timeline or it's not a cyclical thing. Back in the day, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief was all the rage, but that has long been defunct. There are no set phases. You feel all those feelings. It's not in order. It's not on a timeline. And so we say, come when you're needing to be part of our community. Don't come if you don't need it. We don't have registration for our groups. We do for workshops just so that we have a better count for supplies needed since we are working with other organizations. Um, but really, it's whenever you're feeling the need to not be alone on this journey together.
And how many do you see at one time?
Anywhere from one person, and our largest group so far has been 10. We'll see as we grow what that looks like. Is it, do we cap it at 12? Do we start splitting into more niche groups where we say this is a group for kids who have lost someone to suicide? This is a group for kids who've lost a mom or a sibling. And we might get more specialized in that. And that's what we're looking at doing within the schools as well as we move there. And because once you do start putting yourself into the school systems, those numbers double, triple, and so it's really just about looking at the needs for those kids and how to best serve them. Right now, we do grades K through 5 as a group, and then grades 6 through 12 as a group, and each night varies. Some nights when you have only 4 kids, it's fine, but when you start moving into that 10 kid range, then you're looking at, like, does this really fit all of these kids? Do we need to break it up a little bit more? Um, but really, it's going to be about flexibility and learning to see what the kids need as they come in.
Mhm. Is there a success story that you can share?
It's really hard because, again, grief is cyclical. You're going to have good days and bad days. But one story that I do usually gives me goosebumps. We had a girl who's been coming since day one. And then we had a girl who joined a few months in, and they're both 7 years old. And the one girl leaned over to the other girl and said, "Who did you lose?" And the new girl said, "I lost my dad." And the one who'd been coming for a while said, "I lost my dad too." And they scooched their chairs closer together. And then for the rest of the night, they were just buddies. They were side by side. They didn't have to talk anymore about it. They just inherently knew, like, this is somebody who can see my soul right now. This is somebody who feels that pain and that loss that I'm feeling. Um, and so seeing that connection, because really that community base, letting those kids know that they're not alone, that no matter what feeling they're feeling, like, it's normal and it's okay and it's not going to always be easy, but you're not alone in what you're going through.
And so you said you have a social worker?
We do. Yep.
And what else comprises your staff?
That's it right now. It's the social worker and then myself, and we have our 5 boards of directors and the amazing volunteers who have volunteered their time and services to help with our workshops. We've had some wonderful students come in, usually from the University of Mary, who are in their social work program, and they do anything from, vacuum to help do data input. And so right now we're growing and trying to figure out what the next best step is. Um, but in North Dakota, there is currently about 14,000 children who have lost just a parent or sibling. That does not count for close grandparents or aunts or uncles or best friends. Just in our community here in Bismarck Mandan, we've lost several students over the last year. Those losses are growing by the time a child reaches 25. So they're not a child anymore, they're a young adult, but that doubles, those numbers double to about 34,000. And so we know the need is there. And as our resources catch on and as they spread out, we will continue to grow with it. And whatever the community needs, we just want to be here to be a continued resource and support for them.
Mhm. And what impact, what have you seen the impact on a
Mhm.
child's mental health going
Mhm.
through the grieving
Mhm.
process?
We've had so many kids come in who are ready to start talking, but they haven't had a place, a safe place, or they haven't had the tools given to them because not every child is going to be able to verbally express a feeling or say what is going on inside of them. And that's where all of the continued tools come in, whether it's writing or music or art or what have you. But um, we have seen some kids come in and you can tell that they're closed off. But once they see other kids sharing and being vulnerable, um, you can start to see that wall lift and they're not as vulnerable anymore, or they're not as closed off anymore. They want to be a little bit more vulnerable and they want to say, like, I'm not sleeping well, or like, I feel very overwhelmed, or just getting the opportunity to express those feelings that have been bottled up inside of them for so long. That's been one of the biggest impacts we've seen. That again, it's that peer to peer watching kids who've gone through similar things. And so it's a huge thing because undiagnosed grief, or the symptoms of grief that are unaddressed, can lead to so many other unhealthy symptoms. And so you see the depression and you see the anxiety, loneliness, loss of interest, but there are so many other long-term effects associated with unaddressed grief. And so we're really trying to get ahead of that and almost have it be a preventative measure, letting people know that it's okay to feel sadness. It's okay to ask for help. It does not mean you're weak because you are feeling all these feelings. What it means is that you've gone through a big thing. So now let's provide you with a community who can also see what you're going through.
Wonderful work that you do.
Thank
How
you.
did you come up with Soul 57?
57 was my sister's lucky number. In the few years that we were planning and preparing and prepping for all of this, I had thrown out a few names out there, but that's the one that just always felt right and stuck. When my sister had chores to do, there was always 57 loads of laundry or 57 kids playing in our house. But the number 57 also appeared at pretty important times in her life. And those were more personal to her. But then she ended up passing away in room 757 at the hospital. There was just a lot of little things that led to that. And so that's the titles, or the name is kind of a nod to her. It's just keeping her close and remembering why we're doing what we're doing.
What needs do you have?
Oh man. Well, I mean, we could always use a good vacuuming with kids running around there. No,
No.
but we, in terms of support, because every service we offer is free, we are 100% grant and donor based. And so we're never, we're never not asking for donations. We have fundraisers in the works, but again, we're just learning to see as we start up, like what's going to work for the size of our organization right now. The kids go through so many snacks, so we're always taking um, shelf stable snacks, water, juice, toilet paper, paper towels, paper plates, those sorts of things. But then as we do start doing more fundraising, we will put it out there on our website. And we are looking for interns right now at the college level, especially those who have psychology, social work based backgrounds, or who are looking to go into those fields.
Mhm. Wonderful. Jenny, is there anything else that you can think of that you'd like to share?
I just want everybody to know, death is not a cozy subject, but it's not something any of us are immune to. We're all going to go through this. And I always try and remind adults, like, think of your hardest day as an adult when you have lost a loved one. And then now put yourself in that situation, but with a child's perspective, and how overwhelming and scary that can be. And I just want people to keep encouraging the loved ones in their life, whether it's an adult with a child who is grieving or a child themselves. Just it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to look for other people who are going through similar things. You're not going to always find what you're looking for in one place, but spreading that around and giving kids the opportunity to find that community and that support. And it doesn't have to be a stigmatized thing anymore. It has been for so long in Western culture, but especially in the Midwest. We're very strong. We can do things by ourselves. We have to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. And that's not always going to get you where you need to be, or at least not in a healthy way. And so I just like people to know that feeling all of the feelings is okay and asking for help is okay.
Wonderful. Jenny, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And for more information about Soul 57, you can call 701 751 0842 or send an email at info@soul57.org. Also, visit their website, soul57.org, and follow them on social media. That's all for this edition of It Matters. I'm Marci Narum. Join us again next time.